Cradled in the rolling foothills of northern Georgia, Lake Lanier has long been known for its vast shores and hidden depths. Built over sunken towns and rumored graveyards, the lake has birthed countless legends, some half-truths, others terrifyingly real. One such story, whispered by locals late at night around flickering campfires, speaks of a family of 4 who perished here beneath the murky waters. Long after their funeral wreaths sank to the bottom, it is said that the innocent victims of that night still roam the lake in a different form. But innocent doesn't describe all 4. The mother and father were anything but. Michael and Wendy Downing were the sort of parents nobody would wish on their worst enemy. They inhabited a dilapidated single-story house by a winding road that skirted the edge of Lake Lanier. From a distance, it might have appeared quaint. Acres of wooded land, a porch sagging under the weight of countless rainy seasons. But inside, paint peeled off the walls, and the stench of stale beer mingled with the acrid sting of other substances. Evidence of the parents' destructive habits was everywhere. Used syringes tossed under furniture, blackened spoons scattered on chipped countertops, and tiny spots of blood staining the corners of the living room rug. They had 2 children, twins named Jason and Jasmine, who had just turned 10 that summer. If life had been fair, the twins would have spent days fishing, collecting wildflowers, and laughing beside the big old oak that stood in front of their house. Instead, their home was a war zone. Michael's temper would flare at the smallest irritation, like the squeak of a door or the children's giggles cutting through his drug-induced stupors. Wendy was sometimes more sympathetic, but she was often too lost in her own haze to protect the twins from her husband's outbursts. Neither parent was capable of love in its true form. Their cravings and addictions were the only things that seemed to matter. Neighbors rarely saw the children. When they did, they noticed bruises or vacant stares. The local police were called from time to time, but without concrete evidence or persistent witnesses, nothing stuck. Complaints would vanish in a sea of paperwork. And so the family's life trudged on, overshadowed by the looming presence of the Black Lake nearby. That final night, however, would cement their fate in the annals of Lanier's legends. It began with a wild party in a shack not far from the water's edge. Michael and Wendy had indulged heavily. They stumbled out of the shack well past midnight, desperate for another fix. From all accounts, the twins were with them, both trembling in the back seat of a beat-up station wagon. Rain hammered down, turning the dirt road into slick mud. The wind whipped through the pines, making them sway like spindly apparitions in the gloom. Had Michael not been so high, perhaps he would have thought better of speeding along that slippery road. Or maybe he did know the risk, and simply didn't care. He pressed the gas pedal down hard, ignoring the children's pleas from the back seat. Wendy, her eyes hollow and glazed, hollered at him to slow down, though she was hardly coherent. It's unclear what exactly happened in those final moments. Some say Michael swerved to avoid a deer crossing the road. Others claim he simply lost control. In either case, the outcome was the same. The old station wagon careened over a guardrail, rolled down a small embankment, and plunged headfirst into Lake Lanier. The water swallowed the car quickly, like a living beast that had opened its jaws wide. The screams of Jason and Jasmine were lost in the tumult of crushed metal and rushing water. Within moments, the entire family was submerged. A few people from the party, who had hopped into vehicles of their own and followed, arrived to see the red glow of taillights disappearing beneath the surface. They called the authorities in frantic terror, but it was all in vain. By the time divers went down, nothing could be done. 4 bodies, 2 adults, 2 children, were eventually recovered, though rumour has it the water was so murky that the divers could barely see their own hands. Officially, the tragedy was chalked up to substance abuse and reckless driving. Locals gossiped about the abuse and the household's dark secrets, but the story would have ended as just another cautionary tale, if not for the strange sightings and unexplained deaths in the years that followed. The first bizarre incident occurred a year after the accident. A young couple, both parents to twin infants, were spending a lazy summer afternoon swimming in Lake Lanier near the site of the crash. The husband disappeared underwater and never resurfaced. A frantic search led to his body, discovered a week later, bearing strange scratches on his arms and chest. Then came more reports, swimmers vanishing without a trace, boats overturning under calm conditions, nights when piercing screams echoed across the lake with no explanation. The pattern became chillingly clear. The ones who disappeared were almost always parents. While children remained relatively unscathed, merely suffering the usual scrapes and bruises that come with summer mischief, mothers and fathers were found at the bottom of the lake or washed ashore, claw marks etched into their skin, their mouths open in silent terror. Some said they saw two faint figures, a boy and a girl, drifting beneath the surface like shimmering silver fish, waiting. Locals began to call them the Twins of Lanier. Many believed it was Jason and Jasmine, trapped between worlds, furious at parents for the cruelty they had experienced. Word spread that the ghosts could sense the presence of mothers and fathers, people who represented the neglect and abuse they had once known. It didn't matter if those parents were good or bad. The supernatural hunger for vengeance had no moral nuance. Anyone who dared wade into the waters, especially in the late twilight hours, risked encountering the twins' wrath. One particularly haunting account came from a fisherman named Travis. He was alone on his boat one warm summer evening, tending his lines as he drifted near the western cove. The setting sun tinted the horizon bloody red, casting eerie reflections across the water. Suddenly, a giggle echoed from somewhere behind him, a child's laughter that had no business being out there in the middle of the lake. He spun around, squinting at the rippling surface, but saw nothing. Moments later, his line jerked with a furious tug. He reeled in quickly, expecting a massive fish. Instead, he claimed to have seen a pale hand, not an arm, just a hand, clawing at the surface before vanishing into the depths. Terrified, Travis left immediately. He had heard the stories of the twins and wanted no part of it. He might have saved his own life by leaving. After all, Travis was single, childless. The ghostly presence had no reason to pursue him. But that glimmer of a hand is something he would never forget. Rumors escalated when two more fatalities occurred in rapid succession. A mother of 3 drowned while her children watched from the shore, paralyzed by fear. Days later, a father visiting from out of state disappeared during a routine dive for lost valuables in a popular swimming area. Each time the local authorities tried to calm the public, explaining that Lake Lanier, due to its size, boat traffic, and hidden debris, simply had a higher than average rate of accidents. But locals whispered a darker explanation. The ghosts of Jason and Jasmine, fueled by betrayal, luring unsuspecting parents to watery graves as revenge for every bruise, every broken promise they had once endured. The real tragedy of it all, some say, is that neither child had truly known love while they were alive. Their short existence had been marred by violence and fear, courtesy of 2 people who should have cherished them above all else. In death, they found a twisted sense of power. They were no longer helpless or small. Anyone who vaguely resembled a father or mother became a target for their righteous fury. With each new drowning, the legend grew stronger, painting the twins as watery reapers who would never rest. To this day, those who live around Lake Lanier tell newcomers, "Swim if you must, but if you're a parent, Stay away from the shallows after dark. Some have tried to appease the restless spirits by leaving small toys or flowers on the banks, offerings of kindness to two children who never had a proper childhood. Others hold candlelight vigils at the anniversary of the accident, praying that the twins might find peace and move on. But the drownings never stop completely. Once every few summers, the hush of the evening is broken by splashing panic, strangled cries, and an unnatural silence. And when the divers arrive, all they recover are bodies with bruises shaped like tiny handprints. Perhaps the most unsettling question about Lake Lanier's haunted waters is whether the kids are truly alone down there. Some local folklore insists that Michael and Wendy's rage and addiction have manifested as an even darker entity beneath the waves, a malevolent presence that binds the children to this cycle of vengeance. Others speculate that Wendy's spirit is too lost to find the twins, forced to roam the lake's perimeter in a perpetual stupor. Whatever the case, no one has ever claimed to see the mother or father's ghosts in any recognizable form. They remain a mystery, overshadowed by the mythic and terrifying presence of Jason and Jasmine. On a still night, if the moon is high and the water is calm, some say you might catch sight of two faint shapes gliding just below the surface. They linger in the moonlight, features blurred by rippling reflections. If you listen carefully, you may hear the faint echo of children's laughter, sweet and chilling all at once. And should you dare to wade in, perhaps wanting to prove your bravery, beware if you happen to be a parent. The water will feel unnaturally cold around your ankles, and an invisible force may tug at you. Glancing down, you might notice tiny hands, no bigger than a 10-year-old's, pulling you deeper, deeper, until your screams become bubbles. That is the story passed around Lake Lanier, a chilling reminder of how abuse and neglect can echo far beyond the mortal coil, fostering a vengeance that time and logic cannot quell. The next time you visit those shores, stand for a moment and let your eyes wander across that vast expanse of dark water. You might feel the goosebumps raise on your arms, or sense a pair of curious, vengeful spirits lurking below. And if you happen to be a parent, especially one who might take your children for granted, think twice before you swim. Because sometimes the innocent aren't always the ones who rest peacefully, and the ghosts of a horrible past have a way of surfacing in the moonlit hush of Lake Lanier.